Welcome back to EdL 594. I'm your instructor, Professor Mildred Donoghue. Today we'll be going over your third chapter, the design of your curriculum guide. This chapter is the blueprint or recipe for Chapter 4, and by preparing it properly, you will make the writing of Chapter 4 considerably easier. Chapter 3 is the core of your project. In Chapter 1, you outlined your rationale for your project. In Chapter 2, you examined past research in your field. And in Chapter 3, you will explain how your own contribution to your subject will unfold. Because you are creating a curriculum guide, Chapter 3 will focus on the design of that guide. It will have three main elements. It will cover the organization of Chapter 4, the sources of your activities and materials, and the criteria you have applied to the selection of those activities and materials. Chapter 3 is a specific blueprint for writing Chapter 4, so it begins with how Chapter 4 will be organized. You will want to identify the target audience of your guide and the purpose of your guide. In other words, say whom you are writing for and why you are writing. You will also list the materials that appear in your guide, lesson plans, visual aids, and so on, and explain the purpose of those materials. Consider an example. This project is called Graphic Organizers, a visual aid for third grade English language learners to facilitate science content learning. In the organization part of Chapter 3, this student explained that the project is designed for third grade teachers. The purpose of the guide is to explain science content to English language learners in order to meet state science standards. The student listed the materials in the guide: 12 graphic organizers for life science concepts, 7 graphic organizers for earth science, and 12 graphic organizers for physical science. Finally, the student emphasized that the purpose of these materials was to introduce or reinforce science concepts in a practical way. The student also mentioned that the materials in the guide would benefit all third grade students, not just English language learners. In the next part of Chapter 3, you will cite the sources of any activities, materials, or concepts in your guide that are not wholly original to you. Because no research takes place in a vacuum, you will want to acknowledge the contributions of others to your work. Make a list of people and materials that you found helpful in preparing your guide. You might mention classes you have taken at Cal State Fullerton or elsewhere. You might cite professional development experiences, such as seminars, conferences, and workshops you have attended. You might also cite published works such as books and articles that you have consulted, and any fellow teachers who have helped you organize your thoughts or prepare your materials. In the Graphic Organizers project, for example, the student cited the state science standards for which she was writing in order to show where she got the requirements for her work. She also cited the state-adopted science textbooks that her graphic organizers were designed to complement in order to show why she organized her work the way she did. Finally, she cited a Cal State Fullerton class called Learning Theory for Classroom Use, where the professor introduced her to the idea of concept maps, an idea she later used in her project. Finally, you will want to list the criteria you used to select the activities and materials in your guide. Say why you selected or rejected the materials you did. Connect your guide to the research and theories of authorities in your subject, which you discussed at length in Chapter 2. You will also want to connect the design of your guide to the rationale you discussed in Chapter 1. And of course, you should clearly outline how your materials will appear in Chapter 4, since the design of your guide is the primary purpose of this chapter. In the Graphic Organizers project, the student emphasized her primary reason for creating the graphic organizers and including them in her guide, namely that younger students need to decipher content that is overwhelming in text format and that visual aids help them decipher it. She connected the content of her guide to child development research in Chapter 2 that showed how simple visual aids helped English language learners organize and process information. She cited her rationale from Chapter 1 by emphasizing the need for visual learning, where students are not comfortable with the language of instruction. Finally, she stated that her graphic organizers would make up most of the content of her handbook. This attention to detail is part of what made this project an excellent one. Once again, my contact information is displayed here for reference. If you have any questions about the content of this presentation, feel free to email me or ask me during your weekly Skype conference. Thank you for watching, and good luck in writing Chapter 3.